Drivers, welcome. It is hour number 2 of SiriusXM's Road Dog Trucking News. Thanks for being out there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I'm Mark Willis, and the phone number to call into the program, it is 888-876-2336. That's the number to dial all across North America. Hope you get into the conversation, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to bring on board a brand new segment here on Road Dog Trucking News. This is called 3 Under 30. You know, 3 Under 30, ladies and gentlemen, is a program concept I was thinking about the other day, and I wanted to bring it to the table and have you guys weigh in on this. 3 Under 30 is going to involve bringing on board 3 people in the trucking industry under the age of 30 to find out what their job responsibilities are, what is it like dealing with older drivers and employees. What would they like the older employees or drivers to know about them to make the older group really appreciate the job that they are assigned to do? And can the older drivers and employees over the age of 30 really get an appreciation of what the under 30 group is doing out there? I thought it might be very interesting to see the generational differences and come to some consensus about how both groups can work together towards a common success. I want to bring on board 3 folks who are with Crete Carriers, Phillips, Lukas Mullins, and also Patrick Heibel on the program. We're going to talk about, what it's like to be under 30 working in the trucking industry. And I want to say good afternoon to everyone on board. Derek, good afternoon to you, sir.
I'm good, Mark. Thank you.
Outstanding. And Lukas, I believe I have you as well, sir. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Outstanding. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me on the program. And we are going to get Patrick on in just a few minutes from now. But, the important thing is to bring this whole concept to the table. I thought it'd be very interesting to hear from folks that are working in the trucking industry under the age of 30, because so many of the drivers out there are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and are dealing with younger people that are inside of the offices of the trucking companies out there. And let's set this up. Want to get your perspective. Derek, tell folks what you do, sir. What do you do for Crete?
I'm a fleet manager. I deal with both Crete Carrier and Schaefer trucking drivers. I manage roughly 250 drivers based out of the Midwestern states.
Okay, and that's a pretty big job. I mean, you're managing 250 drivers based out of the Midwest. Man, you got your hands full, it sounds like.
Yeah, we definitely do. So we manage everything from driver productivity to servicing the customers to idle and fuel management. So we definitely have our hands full.
Okay, outstanding. How did you get into the industry?
Well, it kind of come by surprise. I was going to college for golf course management. At the time, my brother, Isaac, was working third shift dispatch at Crete, was looking to get a little extra money, so he convinced me to put an application in, and 10 years later, I'm still here.
Okay, outstanding. And, I'm sure you've seen a lot of great folks come and go. You talk to a lot of great drivers out there. How do they feel from the standpoint of you being, say, at the age of 30? Do they kind of look at you and go, well, you're at 30 years old. I've been out here for many, many years out there. How do they look at that? What do you do?
Well, at first they did. They see a younger guy in there they're basically their direct supervisor, and I can see, and at the time I was 20, 21 when I started, but
okay.
The big thing's just the communication, building a relationship. Once you got your trust with those guys, I mean they're great. So.
Okay, outstanding. And that's one of the key components, would you say, Lukas, that when you talk with drivers out there, when you deal with folks that are in the industry, that, did it take a little bit of time getting started as you first got started, maybe looking at it from your age, so to speak? Did they look at you maybe being under 30 and saying, you got a long way to go or a lot to learn in trucking? What would you say?
I would definitely agree with that. I mean, a lot of times when I'm talking over the phone, they might not know that I'm that age.
Okay.
I am only 24, but once I build that relationship, like Derek was saying, and actually show them what I can do, that relationship progresses a lot more. And it's all about the trust and communication, and that's what's really important. Once you kind of get through a little bit with them and kind of break through the shell, things work out pretty well.
And breaking through that shell, how do you do that? Is it getting to know the drivers, say, understanding what's going on with their family, what the driver's likes and dislikes are? How do you break that shell, in other words?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what I do is I work with the onboarding, and that is working with brand new drivers new to the company. And that's one of the first phone calls that we have is we kind of talk about their hobbies outside of work, talk about their family, get to know them on a personal level. And that's one of the biggest things that we try to get through. And we just feel like we want to make it as much of a family effort as we can. If you get to know someone, you're not going to want to let them down. And I feel like they really trust us once we get to know them personally.
Well, and Derek, to that point, as far as you've been in this for a while, 10 years now, did you find it hard to maybe win the trust over a lot of the drivers out there? Did you maybe try to get to know their family or, what some of the drivers' likes and dislikes are? In other words, how did you bridge that gap? I mean, you've been in the industry 10 years. You got a lot of experience under your belt. Is one of the important things about, being at the age of 30 or under is getting to know people that are, say, maybe in their 40s, 50s, or 60s that are out there today? How important is it to cross that age barrier?
It's huge. Off what Luke was saying, I make it a point to reach out to my drivers. My assistant was giving me a little grief earlier today. I get a phone call and she would say something, and I'd automatically know the driver, their wife, the driver code, and all that. And, that's the majority of our conversations. We'll call for business, but we'll have 5 minutes discussing about how the Yankees did in baseball or, how Obama's doing at home. So, yeah, it's huge.
Okay, yeah, and I think the both of you would probably agree that once you start to form that collaborative bond, I mean, again, working with, say, folks that are in their 40s or 50s or beyond, once you form that collaborative bond, there is a trust built with this, right? Correct in that, Derek? I mean, building that trust is going to be key across all of the age barriers. Correct in that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. And what about as far as you were concerned, Lucas? I mean, building that trust, one of the critical components of this, because, you can talk about family relations and different things that are going on, birthdays, celebratory items, and things like that. But, man, once that trust is built, you've got a driver for life, in other words, right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, they rely upon us for their pay. They rely upon us for their home time, making birthdays at home for their family, anniversaries. And they might be halfway across the United States and need home in 3 days. And a lot of times they're going to just have to trust us and they have to let us know what's going on and just be able to let us take control and let us show them what we can do. Trust is one of the biggest things here.
All right, drivers, let me reset this. And again, it's a brand new segment here on Road Dog Trucking News called 3 Under 30. Interviewing 3 people in the trucking industry, 30 and younger, that are in the industry. I mean, boots on the ground, working with drivers out there, fleet managers, driving a truck. As a matter of fact, if you've been out there in the industry for many years, what would you like to ask these 2 gentlemen on the phone about working in trucking? What do you think they need to know as far as what you are doing? How can you help them understand your job a little bit better? And call in and jump into the conversation. Again, I've got Derek Phillips on the phone with me right now. He has been at Crete for 10 years. He's been in the industry for 10 years, along with Lukas Mullins, and he's been at the company for just over a year and 10 months, 24 years of age. Worked in warehouses before, working with transportation, but first time working directly with coordinating drivers. And you got into this industry, Lucas, as your dad had worked in several places working with transportation, right? So it just kind of got in your blood early.
Yeah, a little bit. When I was younger, it was one of my first jobs. I worked in a warehouse, and I would just help my dad. He actually worked with a bunch of gas stations and cigarettes. So I was actually pretty young, packing up trucks and everything. And so started pretty young, just kind of getting familiar with trucking and just the whole transportation department.
Okay, and Derek, for you, this is a career. In other words, you're going to keep after this, 65 and a gold watch, so to speak?
Absolutely. That's the plan.
Okay, very good. All right, a lot of folks are calling in. And, guys, again, I wanted to bring this new segment of the table, 3 Under 30. If you want to talk with 3 people under the age of 30 in the trucking industry, and if you're a veteran man, if you've been out there for 20, 30, 40 years or longer. What would you like to say to the young people working in the trucking industry? You know, there's a lot of things that maybe a lot of the veterans can learn from the younger people in the trucking industry. You know, let's talk about the generational differences that are out there. First up, I've got K-Bar in Indiana. K-Bar, welcome, sir. You're on 3 Under 30. What do you say to these young guys?
Afternoon, gentlemen. What I say is two things. One, same thing I've been saying for the 26 years I've been driving trucks. Communication is key, and it's a two-way street. Drivers have to communicate with the people in the office and let them know what's going on out here, and the office has to communicate with the driver. You leave us in the dark and let us make our own decisions, you really can't come back and complain about it. If you don't tell us what you want, we don't know. We're not mind readers any more than the guy sitting in the office is a mind reader on what we want. So communication is very important for both sides of the street. And the second thing is, I have a dispatcher. He's 28, and he's only been in this industry not quite a year. His first job in the industry, dispatcher, he's very, very good. And he does something I recommend all young people do. Talk to us old fogies. Rely on our experience. I've been out here 26 years. I've seen a lot. I've done a lot. If I tell you that there's a certain way to do something and that's the best way to work, I'm probably pretty right about it and stuff. I've been doing this 26 years. Rely on my experience.
Okay. All right. Very good. K-Bar, appreciate it. Derek, weigh in on that. Do you find that, you know, some of the sources of frustration is that maybe some of the drivers are left in the dark in general? That maybe there's some miscommunication out there. That communication bridge, vital, so vital between the ages here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, going back to the second point, you know, he mentioned, you know, talking to the older boys out there, and, you know, I got, I would say a handful of drivers that have been just with Crete for 3 or 4 years longer than I've been alive. So, you know, I call them all the time, you know, hey, this is the situation I'm seeing, you know, give me your insight. What's your input, you know, and you know, and the same time that comes around their way too, you know.
Yeah. And what do you say to that as far as, you know, listening to some of the older drivers? How would you respond to that, Luke?
Well, I don't think I'd be as successful as I am now if I hadn't.
Okay. But also too, is it a two-way street that the drivers maybe can't be so set in their ways that they aren't open to ideas, say, from the office? I mean, how important is that?
It is. And,
okay.
You know, kind of, you know, we do bring a lot of drivers into the office and kind of show them what our dispatch screens look like. You know,
okay.
Why are we making this decision we're doing? You know, why are we using this technology to set you up, you know, for a certain load to get you, well, we're sending you this way because we have a pre-plan right behind it that's going to turn around and send you right back to your house. So, you know, a lot of them see that bigger picture of the one load straight to the house, and it's usually not always that case. But we do like to bring them in and sit down and, you know, show them what we're seeing, and I think it's shed some light.
Okay, outstanding. Yeah, and again, drivers, if you want to jump in, 3 Under 30, a brand new segment here on Road Dog Trucking News. Master Sergeant Tennessee, that's where you are, sir. Welcome to the program, 3 Under 30. Yeah. What would you tell folks?
I would tell them, find a company driver or ask the company if you could go out on the road for like 2 or 3 weeks and get a real point of view of how everything works out here. Talk to the drivers in the truck stops. Watch the driver. See how he knows. There's sometimes where they do a pre-plan of a trip and route them. But, like, I've been out here about 34 years now. And I know most of the roads and all this stuff, but I know a lot of shortcuts, too.
Okay.
I might be able to cut that time in half or a quarter. A lot of companies out here don't let you do that. They want you on a certain route. Okay. All right, but there's a reason, right, for that. Right. Right? I mean, but when you try to maybe navigate around some of the predetermined routes, you bring up the whole idea that, hey, it might be more efficient if I go this way instead of that way. Are they listening to you? Are they receptive to that from time to time?
No,
I've been through like 8 different dispatches and
Okay.
4 different companies, and some of them say, "Oh, go the route that you think is best for you," and some of them will say, "No, this is the way we do it.
Okay.
This is and all this stuff."
Okay, all right, outstanding. I appreciate it, Master Sergeant. But, guys, let me get your thoughts on that. I mean, because, if somebody says or a driver says, okay, I can do this in a much more efficient fashion if I go this way instead of that way, there may be policies in place that have got to be followed. That doesn't allow the driver to do that. How have you run across a situation like that before? How has that been handled?
Yeah, so I come across that every single day.
Okay.
We do have a suggested route line, and that is going to be mostly for fuel costs. And that's going to be our cheapest way possible of doing the load.
Okay.
But at the same time, if a driver does know of a different way, we do take that into consideration. There are going to be some different things, though. They might not be able to get reimbursed for toll roads if there are going to be more toll roads on that way that they want to go. We're lenient on that. They can take a route that they want to go, but we do suggest the suggested route for a reason.
Okay, all right, outstanding. And again, it's the communication factor, correct, Annette?
Yes.
And that's
Yeah.
being able to talk about it. All right, I'm coming up on a break. Guys, so hold on. Great conversation, ladies and gentlemen. Jerry is going to come up next out of Missouri, and he wants to welcome you guys to the industry. And again, if you are just now tuning in to the program, I've got 3 under 30. This is a brand new segment here on the program, drivers. I wanted to talk with 3 employees in trucking that are under 30 about what their job responsibilities are. What is it like dealing, say, with older drivers and employees? What would they like the older drivers, employees to know about them to make the older group maybe appreciate the job that they are assigned to do? And vice versa. What would you tell those under 30 about your job out there? And I thought it might be fun, interesting to see maybe the generational differences and how both groups can maybe work towards some common success out there. Let's get an update on traffic and weather this very minute right here on SiriusXM.
Back to Road Dog Trucking News with Mark Willis.
All right, drivers. Hey, the phone number to call into the program again, it's 888-876-2336. That's the number to dial into here. This is a brand new segment here on the program on Road Dog Trucking News called 3 Under 30, talking with drivers and employees that are under the age of 30. In the trucking industry. What is it like to be in trucking? What do they like about trucking being under 30? Some of their job responsibilities. What is it like dealing with older drivers and employees? And what would they like the older employees, drivers, to know about them to make maybe the older group appreciate the job that they are assigned to do? And vice versa. So what do you think about that, ladies and gentlemen? The generational differences can be huge in the trucking industry, and one of the most important things is communication and also bridging the gaps that are there to maybe make the industry more productive, more effective, and safe. And from Crete, I've got Derek Phillips. He's been in the industry for 10 years. In January, all with Crete, he manages 250 drivers based out of the Midwest. He's been in the industry for a long time. He was lured by his brother to get into the trucking industry. He was hired on as a second shift dispatcher while going through college, and then was promoted by to an operations manager and then a fleet manager. Derek, where are you going next? As you continue to move up the chain of command in Crete there, what would be the next step if you decide to move up from fleet manager?
That's a good question, Mark. I like where I'm at, and
Okay.
we'll just see where the road takes, I guess.
Okay, outstanding. But the point of that is that there are opportunities, right?
Absolutely.
For those that are, say, 30 and under, because, a lot of the drivers out there are in their 50s. There is a graying, if you will, in quotes, of the trucking industry. A lot of drivers retiring, a lot of folks that are deciding to move on. But being somebody, say, that is maybe 24, like you are, Lucas, career opportunities are really quite plentiful out there for those that are young getting into the trucking industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's plenty of room to grow. If that's going to be sideways or upwards, there's definitely a lot of opportunity.
All right, let's go to Jerry in Missouri. Jerry, welcome, sir. 3 under 30. What would you tell the young guys that are here?
Well, Mark, you kind of know the story. I'm 70 years old. I've been in the business as of this spring 50 years. 5 million miles safe driving, a whole bunch of other stuff. And I also had the opportunity and the blessing, if you will, of having to study transportation law for a couple of years when I was in my late teens. And I'm at a stage in life that I understand actually is predictable. I have my own authority. So there's 45, 50 different brokers and carriers and brokerages departments that I work with. And many of them I can tell at my level, and they're entry-level people. Mm-hmm. And I have to understand what they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. The first thing us older people don't want to do is get in an adversarial. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Second of all, I'm at this stage in life now where I listen, see, most everything we do in trucking naturally is over the phone. And so I listen to the body language, so to say, of the communication, not only to the words. But in there, you will hear those who have potential. Mm-hmm. And it's not only in trucking. I did a lot of volunteer work at Red Cross. I love to work with young people because you'll find those that have potential. So here I am. In my stage of life, it is my responsibility to the herd, if you will, to recognize the potential, exhort them, encourage them, help them to fill in the holes of knowledge by sharing with them, not telling them, sharing with them history. Now, us older people got to be careful about living in the past. Right. However, you have to find out a way of making the past relevant to where we are today.
Well said. Well said.
And then furthermore, help them to fulfill their potential.
Well said, Jerry. Well said, sir. And that helping them realize that potential, man, it opens up a lot of doors, doesn't it? Because it takes down any generational barriers that are going to be in place there, right?
You know, I have this way. There's another whole thing I do out here, Mark, where I find myself adopting people. I really do. I have a little adopting thing I do. So I have now adopted sons, adopted daughters out here. I'm having a great time.
Sure.
So I even have them call me back after they do this one. Can I call you back? There's more I want to understand. The history is so exciting. We just didn't know. Mm-hmm. And I have plenty of time driving out here. I love to do that with them.
Yeah.
Instead of just them being Derek, when Derek and I somehow get a relationship and I hear the body language and the interest and the mutual respect,
right?
I kind of feel like I've adopted another son.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You take an interest in that person and they take an interest in you as well. Jerry, thank you, man, for that. I appreciate it. And guys, I'm coming up on a news break. Let's talk about that when we come back. I think, one of the most important things with this is that you have to build trust between the ages here. Young people, the older drivers out there, that communication bond is so critical. Do you monitor, say, other dispatchers to make sure that they are meeting all of those objectives? And the driver's got to have the responsibility as well to understand what you guys are doing in the office to, successfully complete that job. Drivers, it's now coming up on the bottom of the hour. That means it is time for news right here on SiriusXM.
This is Road Dog Trucking News with Mark Willis.
All right, drivers. Hey, 38 minutes after the hour, 3:38 East, 2:38 Central. And thank you for being out there, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Willis. And again, we are talking about a brand new feature here on the program called 3 Under 30. Wanted to talk with some individuals that are under the age of 30 in the trucking industry and, kind of bridge that generational gap out there because, so many of the people that are working in trucking companies these days are under the age of 30. And, you think about that for a second, that a lot of you guys driving the trucks are maybe 40, 50, maybe 60 or older driving trucks. That's great. But do you find that there is a generational difference there sometimes that may make some problem situations develop out there. Derek Phillips is on the phone with me, and he has been in the trucking industry for 10 years. He is with Crete. Also, Lukas Mullins, also in the trucking industry, working at Crete. He's been there just over a year and 10 months in drivers. So I wanted to bring you their perspective about being 30 and under, working in trucking. And guys, again, thank you for joining me on the show. And, Jerry had a great point. He's been out there for, 50 years. A great guy, knows his stuff. And, it's really heartwarming to hear that he's willing to work with young people. And he's also open to learning from young people in the trucking industry as well. Man, what a great collaborative effort that is, right? Derek, when you have those, say, older drivers that are maybe willing to, say, teach or tutor, say, younger drivers or younger folks in the industry, right? I'm sure you've run across that as well.
We do. As far as, like Luke mentioned earlier, we have an onboarding asset manager, which is basically a dispatcher that's, kind of hold their hands through the early stages, make sure they know the systems. I have a lot of guys, a lot of the veteran drivers, as Jerry, that we will pair up, and basically adopt them.
Yeah.
So, we got a lot of the older guys that are calling and talking to the younger drivers. They're kind of working together, and it's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lucas, to that point as well, I mean, when you talk with some of the drivers out there, you got to tell them things that they need to do or get done, or they've got to, do certain procedures and pick up loads here and there. And be willing to bet you, though, that they're all listening to you. They want to be successful. Is that at the heart of the whole discussion, a common success for both? For the company, for the dispatcher and the driver, that's shared success right there, right?
Yes, definitely. We actually go through a whole process where it takes about 3 to 4 phone calls that last about 20 minutes, and it basically goes through step by step how we do everything, through the system, what we all expect from the driver, and it's a big, long process, but it definitely pays out. It's a learning experience for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's got to be defined by the company defining success. I mean, is that one of the critical elements here? I mean, for you guys, I mean, you understand what the mission for success is, and then you share that with the drivers and those that are out in the field, right? I mean, it's a critical mission of success that is handed down from management that makes all the difference. Let's go to Joseph, next up in Missouri. Joseph, I appreciate you waiting, good sir. 3 under 30. How old are you? How old are you, Joe?
I'm 60 years old.
Okay, now let me ask you, this is a very interesting thing here, I think, because, you've got a lot of folks in the trucking industry that are under 30 and under. I mean, a lot of new folks are coming up. That's great. We got new blood coming in.
Yes,
but
sir.
do you find that maybe when you talk to those that are 30 and under, that maybe you can learn from them and they can learn from you? How important is that?
Well, I'm always inclined to learn from anybody. But the communication gap out here for the last, I'm wanting to say, as what I've seen, going on 10 years now, the communication, some of these drivers out here have a hard time knowing the words to the English command, and they have that pit bull look down their face as if they're ready to attack you rather than wanting to talk to you. Now, we talked about, you folks were talking about communication skills. Mm-hmm. Myself, I use the 3 C's, communication, commitment, and confidence. You can't have one without the other. And I'll stay out here between 2 to 3 months at a time. Mm-hmm. If the loads are good, if the rate is good, and I'm a company driver, yes, I am an amateur radio operator, and I do take pride in my driving ability as my communication skills of talking on the radio, talking to these other countries. But you have to have the 3 C's. Here's the fine point. This morning, and I'll make it quick because I know you're busy. This morning, I'm coming across Tennessee. This guy, he was NASCAR in my bumper. Mm-hmm. And I drive a 65-mile-an-hour truck, but the truck that was in the granny lane, I wanted to pass him. So this guy come up behind me, NASCAR in my bumper, and I made a comment over the CB radio we call the chicken band.
Okay.
Boy, you could certainly tell who watches NASCAR and who don't. And he came back to me over his CD, and he had the echo box going and the modulator and everything. I said, buddy, I can't even understand you.
Mm-hmm.
And I just let him go.
Right. Right.
That is an affected driver, very infected with the attitude of me first.
Okay. I appreciate it, Joseph. I appreciate the call. And what do you do in a case like that, guys? I mean, when a driver is not really willing to listen or is maybe resilient to maybe changing and things like that. What would you say about that? What would you say, Derek?
It happens. And it happens a lot more with our newer age drivers. I mean,
right.
Like I said, going back, our seniority, our older drivers that have been around, we got great relationships with them at Crete Carrier. I mean,
Yep.
Lucas knows his drivers personally. I know mine personally. If it comes down to it, we're going to say, hey, this is what needs to be done. We're willing to back you up. This is the plan. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yeah, okay, I'll go with it. We understand. And, there's frustrations on both sides. So
Yeah. And what would you say to that, Lucas? How do you feel?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I get some every now and then, angry call. But,
Sure.
Once you kind of just talk to them, explain what happened, explain what we should have done, they will calm down a lot more. That's the most important thing is just trying to coach them. The more that we talk to them, the more that we get to know them, I feel like the more that we can break into that shell and, really just have them work well with us.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, coaching individuals. I mean, and that can be a tough job in itself. I mean, no doubt about that. That could be any corporation, any company out there. But, there's got to be patience when you're coaching somebody, and they've got to be willing to be coached. Is that one of the key elements, even though there might be a generational or age difference out there, the common success of the company is going to be based on, how folks are coachable, who's willing to learn and how each company can grow. That can apply to any job in trucking, right?
it does. And, every driver is different. So, you don't coach every driver the same way. So, and it goes back to what Luke was saying, sitting down and explaining to them why you did what you did goes a long ways in, the driver's attitude. Now, you tell him now this is the way we need to do it, and he's sitting stewing on that. But if you explain to him, it goes a long ways in the coaching process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've got Driftwood coming up next in Wyoming. Driftwood, welcome to the show. 3 under 30. What would you say, sir? Are you open to listening to young people in the industry and vice versa?
Oh, I am a young person in the industry, so.
All right, how old are you? How old are you?
27.
You're 27. All right, very good.
Yes, sir.
All right, outstanding.
And,
now, let me ask you before you jump into it. I mean, how long have you been driving?
9 years.
9 years. Okay. Now, you've heard this going on back and forth, the debate, the conversation about the generational differences out there. When you hear some of the older drivers say, the young drivers, they're just out there all over the place. What do you say to that? What do you say?
I completely agree.
Okay.
I'm a second generation driver. I got behind the wheel of a rig when I was 11 years old. And this is what I do for a living. This is my life. This is my family's life. And most of these guys out here, they're clueless. They're, for lack of a better term, they're steering wheel holders. They couldn't tell the difference between an alternator or a compressor on a truck or anything else.
Right.
And most of them, they have this I know everything attitude. And, especially when it comes to new technologies. And I found that, with the amount of times that my technology, especially my GPS glitches, I use the old school way. I have an Atlas.
Okay.
I have a next exit. And I think that young drivers need to get rid of their arrogance, and they need to listen to old-time drivers, and they will listen. I don't care if he looks like a mean guy. Just go up and talk to him and say, hey, look, man, I don't know what I'm doing out here. I want to learn more. I want to be into this industry. I don't want to be a steering wheel holder. And I can guarantee you that no matter how mean he looks, he is going to show you and talk.
Yeah. Okay. And it's taking that first step, being willing to step up and say to somebody, "Hey, man, can you give me a hand out here?" There's some things I just may not, fully grasp or understand out there. But do you find that to be true, Derek and Lucas, that maybe you guys get calls from drivers out there in general that say, hey, something's going on. Can you help me with this? I mean, and this is where, the generational age differences are kind of pushed aside to solve that problem. Is that becomes job one at the moment, doesn't it, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree sometimes. Like I said, it is just depending on different drivers. Different drivers are going to act different ways.
Right.
But no, I could attest to that it does happen, that some of the younger guys, they might think that they know what's all going on. And that's where the coaching part comes in, and that it's important to, really just kind of break it down and take it step by step and really just kind of work at it and make sure that we're all on the same page.
All right. Outstanding, gentlemen. I'm coming up on a break, and, man, great conversation. 3 under 30. Ladies and gentlemen, a brand new segment here on Road Dog Trucking News, talking with some folks in the trucking industry that are 30 and under. Why are they in trucking being under the age of 30? What do they like about it? What are their job duties? What is it like dealing with older drivers and employees? What would they like the older employee drivers to know about them, and vice versa, to make everybody appreciate the job that they're assigned to do out there? And if you want to jump in and talk with my two guests at the moment, the phone number is 888-876-2336. An update on traffic and weather right now, SiriusXM.
Keeping you up to date and informed. It's Road Dog Trucking News with Mark Willis.
All right, drivers, thank you for being out there, ladies and gentlemen. And a reminder, coming up in a few minutes from now, Casey Phillips will take over the microphone starting at 4 East with the afternoon drive with Road Dog Live. That starts at 4 o'clock Eastern. So, man, stick around for that. Always a lot of fun when Casey takes over the microphone. And, man, what a great conversation, ladies and gentlemen, with this brand new segment called 3 Under 30. I wanted to bring on board 3 individuals that are 30 and under that work in the trucking industry to talk about what their job responsibilities are. What are some of the kind of issues that they've got to deal with working with, say, older drivers? And what would they like the older employees or drivers to know about them to make the older group maybe appreciate the job that they are assigned to do, and vice versa? And guys, really appreciate this. I want to take one more phone call, and we're going to go to Boo Boo in Washington State. Boo Boo, welcome. How old are you, sir? Got about 2 minutes left.
Hi there.
Hey, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I got a quick statement, question,
Okay,
maybe you could call it a question.
Sure.
I'm an older driver. I'm 60 years old, but I haven't been on the road but about 5 years.
Okay.
When I started in the business, I had an old guy that was a dispatcher, and we communicated wonderfully. I now have a young guy that's like 21 years old as a dispatcher, and he's creating a problem, and I think you guys need to know about this. These young guys are all about technology. They text on a telephone faster than I can read it.
Okay.
It takes me a while to do a text.
Sure.
These new guys, they don't want to communicate on the telephone other than by text. They want to use all this great, computer stuff and whatnot. Well, I'm not that computer savvy, and a lot of us older guys are not.
Okay.
So it's becoming a lack of communication that they're creating.
All right, very good. Boo Boo, I'm just about out of time, but let me get the guys to comment on that. Guys, we are in a technology age. How would you respond to his call? This is in general, obviously. What would you say?
As far as the texting and the phone calls, I would say there's a time for both. There's a time for very general questions and answers, where we use a Qualcomm, and the dispatcher, you got to watch some of these guys type. I mean, it's pretty crazy, and
Sure.
they can answer 10 to 15 drivers at the time it takes to answer one phone call.
Right,
Now,
right.
With
And
that being said, some of those other touchy questions, it actually takes some time to sit down and gather your thoughts. That's when a phone call is necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Lucas, summing it up, man, we need all kinds of communications out there between young and old, right? I mean, text messaging, phone calls, Qualcomm, all of it driven towards the success of everybody out there. Correct, Annette?
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of like what Derek was saying, there are going to be times for both of them. And obviously, if it's going to be a long message or you don't really know what's going on, phone call is going to be a lot easier. And that's definitely going to be one way to do it. We don't want to get a message that's pretty lengthy, and then we're going to have to try to remember all of it. Sometimes a conversation over the phone is just going to be a lot easier.
All right, outstanding. Gentlemen, I got to leave it at that. Derek Phillips and Lukas Mullins, both with Crete on the new program, 3 Under 30. Gentlemen, I appreciate it. Thank you for spending the hour with us, and I appreciate the time. Drivers, I'm going to wrap it up.